Welcome to the Escape into Board Games podcast.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Matt.
And this is our escape from the real world where we talk about board games. In this episode, we continue with some fantastic fillers.
So please join us for the Escape into Board Games podcast. So, Chris, how are we doing with defining what a filler is?
I think we're doing good. I think we need to talk about more, though.
There's always room for more fillers.
That's good because I like fillers. Like, I really like fillers.
I can tell. It's very evident.
Yes. And, we've already rambled on quite a bit about fillers.
Yeah.
And
some of our favorites.
Like, I could fill up just on fillers.
Zombie dice. Zombie Dice is a dice-rolling, brain-eating, press-your-luck zombie party game for 2 to 99 players, ages 10 and up. Designed and published by Steve Jackson Games in 2010. In Zombie Dice, players are the zombies, and the dice are the humans that we are hunting. On your turn, you reach into the cup of 13 humans and pull out 3 dice and roll them. There are 3 symbols on the dice. The brains represent the humans you are successfully able to catch and eat. The shotguns are the humans that shoot you, and the feet are the ones that keep trying to get away. So on your turn, after you rolled your dice, you lock your brains and shotguns. And if at any time you have 3 shotguns showing, you lose all your progress so far, return all the dice to the cup, and pass it to the next player. At any time, you can choose to stop, storing the brains you've eaten so far, and saving those points. The first player to reach 13 brains is the winner. So this is the simplest game that I play.
Yeah.
You reach into the cup, you pull out 3 dice, you roll them. You're always rolling 3 dice. You want to go again? Roll 3 dice. It's that simple. I've got my brother in Vancouver tries to recruit his friends to play board games, and he will put this on the table and get it out and try to get everybody involved. And he says it's the litmus test. If they're reaching in and pulling out 4 dice, if they're not rolling the feet again, if they're trying to grab the brains off the table and re-roll them, forget it. We're not going to Ticket to Ride or Can or anything. We're just going to stop here.
I love that idea. If you can't grasp zombie dice, that's it.
We're not going to the next level.
We can still be friends. You just won't be invited to game night.
But that's the kind of game it is.
Right.
You really don't need to keep going, yes or no.
In a lot of ways, I think it's like simpler or lighter than like a game like Yahtzee.
Oh, for sure.
In most ways. I never thought I would say this, but like Yahtzee is more complex.
Yeah. The dice are really nice in that they're embossed with the brains and the shotguns right on them.
Right.
There are 3 different kinds of dice in the cup. There's green dice, which are mostly brains, and a few, like 1 or 2 shotguns and then some feet. The yellow dice, which have a few more shotguns and less brains. And then the red dice, which contain only 1 brain and lots of shotguns, making them the more difficult dice. So as you're reaching into the cup and pulling out dice, you can better judge whether or not you should continue based on the dice you've already pulled out so far.
Right.
If you've got 3 red brains on the table, you can safely pull into the cup knowing that I'm going to pull out yellow and green on the future rounds and keep going, keep pressing my luck further.
Yeah. No, it's a fun one. I definitely like it. How does this compare to Martian dice? Is it essentially the same game, but just a different theme?
It's a different game, but still Steve Jackson.
Yeah.
Martian dice, you're aliens trying to collect cows and people.
Yeah, and probably people, yeah.
It's sort of a set collection where you're trying to get as many different sets. It works slightly different. It's a similar mechanism in that you're rolling dice and pressing your luck, but slightly different.
Yeah.
Room enough for both in your collection.
I love that it's a litmus test. That's pretty good. I have to have a game that's a litmus test. And maybe zombie dice might be it. It works really well. I think if you can't figure out zombie dice, we're not going to ever get to Terra Mystica. So why is zombie dice a good filler game?
You get to Fill up on brains.
Fill up on brains. Brains. All right, that's enough of that. Blank Slate. Blank Slate is a fast-paced party game about filling in the blank and matching your answer to one other player at the table. Designed by Robert A. Kemp, Blank Slate can be played in less than 30 minutes with 3 to 8 players ages 8 and up, and it was published by the Ob in 2018. Each turn, a card is flipped over with a word and a blank space. The fill-in-the-blank section of the card might be before or after the word that's printed on the card. Players write down another word that adds to the original word to form a new word, or maybe a compound word, a 2-word phrase, or even a proper noun is allowed. Adding a new syllable is okay, but it has to be more than just one letter. So, for example, day blank might become day trip. Blank stop might become pit stop, sea blank might become seaweed, and super blank might become Superman. In Blank Slate, you don't want to come up with an obscure reference in this game. You want something that one other player at the table, or maybe 2, might think of as well. 3 points are awarded for each player for words that match with just one player, and 1 point for words that match with 2 players. No one gets any points if your word didn't match, or if everyone wrote down the same word. The first player to 25 points wins the game.
This is similar to Just One. It has that feel, right?
Yeah.
Of that word, but it's different.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think that Blank Slate will get compared to Just One the most. Both party games have players thinking of a single word using dry erase markers and dry erase boards. However, besides not being cooperative, I think the biggest difference is that with Blank Slate, there isn't the pressure on the player that's trying to guess the word that there is in Just One.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. I introduced Just One to some friends a few weeks ago, and they noticed being in the hot seat being very uncomfortable. Like they kept saying how difficult it was to be in that Just One hot seat.
Yeah.
Whereas Blank Slate has none of that.
Yeah, Blank Slate is a competitive game. And, you don't have that person who's got the spotlight on them and they have to figure it out. My wife, Sherry, actually calls this the reverse of Just One. And I think I agree. It sort of makes sense. In Just One, you don't want anyone to put the same word as you in their clue. But with Blank Slate, you want to have your clue match with exactly one other person.
That's right.
Similar feel to the game, definitely. They're both party games. They're both fun. Blank Slate is great with a mixed age group. Usually there's a lot of laughter and a lot of, why did you write that? Or, what were you thinking? What does that mean? I don't understand.
I don't get it.
Yeah. And then a lot of, oh, that is a good word. That was really good.
Yeah. Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, I didn't think of that. So the game's playable with 3 to 8, but I would say I've played it with 3 and it's not nearly as much fun if you have 4 or 5 or more players. 3 is just passable. 4 is okay, and 5 or more is the sweet spot.
Okay.
With the right group, this game can be like lightning fast, like with no downtime at all, because basically what you're doing is you're trying to choose the first word that comes into your head. And if you spend a lot of time thinking about a word that no one else is going to think of, you're not going to get any points. And so for that reason alone, it can be quite fast, right?
Yeah.
And then when 2 players come up with the same clever word, there's always like this high five moment, lots of loud cheering, like, whoa, we did it. Yeah. And we get our 3 points. Yeah, exactly. And you do get this bit of a high, like, oh my God, we were on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a word that you are having trouble thinking of one for. And then, out of nowhere, someone came up with the exact same word. It's like, wow, our brains connected in the ether. For that reason, I find this game is really fun to play with couples. it's a game that you can play with some adult beverages. And as the night goes on, you can play the game several times in a row with the same group. And that can be fun too. I mean, I'm not always one for playing the same game over and over, 3 or 4 or 5 times in a row.
Yeah.
But with the right group and that particular, couples and maybe some adult beverages, it does work really well. Because an interesting thing starts to happen is you start to second guess your answer the longer you play Blank Slate.
Yeah.
You start to say things like, oh, I was gonna put that. Or, I was thinking this and then I talked myself out of it and I put this. And it just becomes really interesting to watch this sort of meta thing happen. It's a great party game. A lot of fun.
Agreed. Chris, what makes it a good filler?
For me, I think that Blank Slate fills the room up with laughter. And when it works really well, it fills the room up with bickering of couples when their answers don't match. So I really enjoyed that part. It's fun to sit back and watch that.
Coup. Coup is a hidden roles player elimination, deduction, bluffing party card game for 3 to 6 players, ages 13 and up, that takes about 15 minutes. Designed by Ricky Tata and published by Indie Boards and Cards in 2012. In Coup, players are trying to take control of the government by using the influence they have over certain political figures to acquire wealth and power and eliminate all the other players. The game consists of 15 cards and some coins, landing it firmly in the micro game category. The deck is made up of political figures. There are 3 copies of the 5 different characters: the Duke, the Captain, the Ambassador, the Assassin, and the Contessa. Each character has a unique power that will help you gain control of the government. For example, the Duke will allow you to collect more income than the other players on your turn, while the Captain will allow you to steal coins from other players. At the start of the game, each player is dealt 2 of these cards. You look at them, and they're kept face down in front of you. On your turn, you can take a basic action or a special action that one of your characters provides, or you can spend 7 coins to eliminate one of your opponent's cards that sits in front of them. If any player loses both cards, they're eliminated from the game. The twist with Coup is that you can take actions the characters provide that you don't control. You can lie. Anytime a player takes a character-specific action, any other player can challenge. When you challenge a player, they must show you the card that allowed them to take that action. If they were lying, they lose one of their cards. If they were telling the truth, then the challenger loses one of their cards. So there's significant bluffing, deduction element in this game that makes it a huge hit with poker players.
That's a good point. Yeah, I could totally see this being a hit with poker players.
Yeah. There's a cheat sheet provided that gives everybody, shows everybody what the rules are, because all the players have different powers, right? So you need to know what they are.
Right.
So it's nice to have that. But it's this tiny little deck, right? Deck of cards. Comes in a tiny box. You can put it in your coat pocket, take it anywhere.
Yeah. Easy to teach. Well, relatively easy.
It's definitely one of the harder ones in the list, but because you've got this cheat sheet, it's a lot easier.
So I was going to ask you, how do you feel about this compared to Love Letter?
I find Coup is a bigger game. There's more strategy. There's a little more luck in Love Letter, depending on which cards you get that you draw. But in Coup, there's ways to mitigate a bad draw. And there's a little bit more going on. So there's more game for sure. I think it's
right.
Yeah.
So if someone played Love Letter a few times and really liked it and wants something else, maybe something a little bit more challenging, then you'd move on to Coup.
This may be the next step up. Yeah.
That makes sense.
But it definitely has more bluffing,
yes,
right, in this one than Love Letter. You can get away with just playing Love Letter strategically without having to do any bluffing. But this Coup's got a lot more than that.
Yeah, this is a big part of this game anyway, is lying. Do you think it's a game like we talked about Sheriff of Nottingham before?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it's a game like that where you could play it without lying, without bluffing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you totally can. Yeah, okay.
The double bluff, right?
I just gave away my strategy.
No, for sure. But there's a double bluff too. Like you have the Duke, but you don't use the Duke's power for the whole game. And then at the end, you're like, "Oh, I am the Duke," and you go to reach for your 3 coins, and everyone's like, "Wait a minute, you've never been the Duke."
Wow,
right?
That's devious.
But you hold back the truth until later in the game, and then you come out with it, and they're like, "Well, that doesn't sound right." And then they call you out on it, and you go, "Bye bye," and you just show them. And again, you're playing the other players at the table. What kind of are they? The aggressive kind? Are they gonna challenge you on everything you do and try to keep you in check? Or are they just going to take your word for everything you say, right? Oh, you're the Duke again?
Right.
Okay, take your 3 coins, I guess, or whatever. And so you have to adapt to the group.
Oh, that's good. That's a good one. I like that one. Why is Coup a good filler game?
In Coup, once you have acquired 7 coins, you filled up on your 7 coins, you can coup one of the other players at the table. There's no way to stop that. It's an unstoppable action. You can't block, can't be challenged. So you got to fill up on those coins. So ultimately, that's how you win. It's a great filler game.
No Thanks. No Thanks is a push your luck bidding auction game with a bit of set collection for 3 to 7 players aged 8 and up. It takes 20 minutes to play and is published by Amigo in 2004. No Thanks has one player being forced to take a card each turn. Players start with some bidding chips, each worth 1 point. Each round, a new card is flipped over and players decide if they want to take the card and its negative points, or if they want to pay one of their bidding chips to not take the card. If you decide that you don't want to take the card, you must put one of your bidding chips on the card. This keeps going around and around the table until someone decides to take the card, and all of the bidding chips on the card as well. The trick of the game is that you don't start with enough money to never take a card for the entire game. You're going to have to take a card, and probably several cards, so you want to take the right cards that will maybe help you lower your score.
Okay.
See, each card has a different number on it, and they range from 3 to 35, with some cards randomly removed based on how many people are playing. Each card is worth negative points at the end of the game, so you want to take the lower valued cards when you have to take a card. When you decide to pay to not take a card, you're hoping that someone else will either take it, or if you wait long enough, that card that might normally give you, say, minus 10 or 15 points, it might have 8 or 9 bidding chips on it.
Yeah.
One of the strategies in No Thanks is to pay to not take a card and hope that other players will also pay, even though you wouldn't mind taking that particular card. The more bidding chips that other players put on it is more chips that you will get to use to avoid taking worse cards in the future. At the end of the game, your score is the sum of your cards minus the number of bidding chips that you have. However, if you have cards with consecutive numbers, then only the lowest number is added to your score.
Okay.
So a 9, 10, 11, 12 would only be worth minus 9 points. The winner of the game is the player with the fewest points or closest to 0 at the end of the game. So the push your luck element is strong with this one. First of all, you don't know what cards were randomly removed from the deck at the start of the game, and that's going to maybe affect your ability to take consecutive cards and maybe lower your score. So in the example I gave, if you had the 9 to 12, but the 11 was removed, then you're going to get the minus 9 and minus 12 points.
Yeah.
I've also seen players push their luck by not taking a card that everyone knows will help them lower their score with the consecutive numbers rule, hoping to get the card with a bunch of bidding tokens on it in a later round. Players will often take a card with negative points instead of allowing an opponent to get a longer run of consecutive cards. In that example, it might be worth for me to take the minus 11 points to force you to take the minus 9 and the minus 12 because you don't have a long consecutive run. So the original game, and I'm going to mess up the title, is Geschenk ist noch zu teuer, which Google tells me translates to even free, it's still too expensive. And I was always fascinated with this translation because I think that's better than the English translation of the game that which we have now, which is just no thanks.
Yeah.
Even free, it's still too expensive.
I love that.
Yeah. I think this is a great game that you want to introduce to young kids, particularly kids who are learning or struggling to grasp some of the basic math skills, because, you know, there's math involved, there's adding.
Yeah, number line stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good one. I'd say the negative side of the game is that it doesn't have any real theme.
Yeah.
It's really just about numbers. You're playing this number and that number.
I would agree with that completely. I find that I need a theme to sort of latch onto, and this is just it's a numbers game. It's interesting enough, but there's no even art to look at or anything. It's just
I would agree. You know, I designed a t-shirt for Geeky Goodies that says theme does matter. So I agree that theme does matter to me. And for this reason, I created my own rethemed version of No Thanks, where players are trying not to take barrels of nuclear waste. I thought this new theme brought the game to life a bit more.
Nice.
Now, I have to be clear, this game was created for my own personal use. It's not available anywhere. You can't buy it. But if you're interested, you can see photos of this on my social media and at BoardGameGeek.com.
A retheme is a new version of a game that already exists, keeping all the rules and basic elements of the game the same, but changing the theme in the game and usually the artwork and/or components. In this way, you might change a game that is about eradicating viruses around the world to stopping monsters from attacking different cities around the world, or from buying and selling real estate to buying and selling robots. Rethemes can be created by dedicated fans for personal use or by designers and publishers looking to breathe new life into an older game.
You can also play No Thanks for free on BoardGameArena.com.
So, Chris, what makes No Thanks a good filler game?
I like filling my opponents with negative points.
We're going to get back to the show after a brief message. This next ad is for Chris's own company, Geeky Goodies. If you'd like to hear what an ad for your game, product, or website might sound like, drop us a line at escapeintoboardgames@gmail.com. When we escape into board games, we're always wearing our Geeky Goodies t-shirts.
They are great conversation starters for gamers and non-gamers.
But did you know that they also sell masks, socks, hoodies, game room posters, mugs, and so much more?
All things board games.
All things geeky.
Visit geekygoodies.com and use coupon code ESCAPE for a 10% discount off your purchase.
Cockroach Poker. Cockroach Poker is a bluffing, single loser, party card game for 3 to 6 players ages 8 and up. Designed by Jacques Zemet and published by Drei Macchia Spiele. Cockroach Poker is the bluffing game. It consists of a deck of 64 cards, 8 cards in each of the 8 creature suits. Scorpions, bats, flies, frogs, rats, spiders, stink bugs, and cockroaches.
Ew, gross.
Ew. At the start of the game, the entire deck is dealt out evenly amongst all players. The first player then selects a card from their deck, looks at it, and slides it across the table to another player. They will then announce the name of the card. They could either be lying or telling the truth. The player that receives the card has 2 choices. They can either guess whether or not the giving player is lying, or they can pick the card up, look at it, and pass it to a new player and tell them what it is, and again, be lying or telling the truth. The card will go around the table like this until a player guesses whether or not they're telling the truth. So this looks like this. I pick up the card, look at it, and slide it to Chris and say, "This is a stink bug." Chris hums and haws, picks it up, looks at it, puts it back on the table, and slides it to Sherry and says, This is a spider. Because Sherry is the last player at the table, she has to say whether or not the card is a spider. This is a spider, she says, as she turns the card face up. If it's a spider, the card goes face up in front of Chris. But if she's wrong, the card goes face up in front of Sherry. The loser of the round selects a new card from their deck, and play begins again. The game is over if any one player goes to draw a card from their deck and is run out, or if they have 4 of any creature in front of them. So this is a fun game in that there's only one loser.
Yeah.
Right. Once we have found out who the loser is, the game's over. Everybody wins with that one person and just pile onto that one person. So that's kind of fun. It's super quick, in spite of being 64 cards.
Yeah.
It does go rather quickly.
It does.
Because at some point in the game, you'll notice that of the players around the table, okay, so Chris has got 3 flies and Sean has 3 rats. And Laura has 3 stink bugs.
Yeah.
So we try to get it so that we can get that 4th stink bug to Laura, right?
Right.
So I'll take the stink bug and I won't give it to Laura right away. I'll give it to Chris and Chris will give it to Sherry and then Sherry will give it to Laura. And hopefully, you kind of pin her. And so there is a pile on. We're anxious to have the person who is already really close to losing lose quicker so that we don't lose.
Yes. I think that's what it is. I mean, it's sort of picking on the low person in the game, right? Because it's like that story about the bear, right? I don't have to run faster than the bear if we're both running. I just have to run faster than you. It doesn't matter how many stink bugs as long as you've got one more creature than I do. Because everyone's going to pick on you.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mean game too. I mean, it's no beheading people during the French Revolution kind of game, but it's a mean game.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm noticing a theme with you. I'm noticing games where you lie and you bluff, and those tend to be in your lists.
I like those kinds of games in a small format. I prefer them in a little quick game like this. Like Cockroach Poker is tight game. There's one loser. And I do like Avalon and Secret Hitler and that sort of thing. But those are longer games that require a little bit more deception for longer periods of time. You hold on to it, and like Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if I can lie for an entire game like that, like a big meaty game, but in these short doses, it's terrific fun.
Yeah.
My favorite strategy for Cockroach Poker is just fake confidence. Just sit right back in your chair. Somebody slides a card over to you and you just guess. They go, "This is a stink bug." You go, "No, it's not." Flip it over. "No, it's not." Just confidently flip it over. You don't even look at it. You put it right in front of their place. Like you knew it was a stink bug before they knew it was this, right? You're like, boom. And then of course, if you're right, it looks like you're like, "What? How did he? I'm not going to call on him. He just flips it over and puts it right in front of me every time."
Psychological warfare.
I'm going to give it to somebody else.
Yeah.
Right, and then they won't include you in the challenge.
Yeah, we call that psychological warfare. It's sort of this added thing to the game that just makes it feel unfair. I don't want to play with Matt anymore.
How is he doing that?
He knows something. So, Matt, what makes Cockroach Poker a fun filler game?
Well, when you're playing Cockroach Poker and that one player starts to lose, it's fun to fill their tableau with all the creature cards.
For Sale. For Sale is a bidding and auctioning game for 3 to 6 players, ages 10 and up, that plays in about 30 minutes. Designed by Stefan Dora and originally published in 1997, For Sale has been produced by a huge number of different companies around the world. My copy was published by Eagle Griffin Games. Players start with some money to bid with, and the first half of the game has players bidding on cards with different properties depicted on them. Each card has a different number and value from 1 to 30, and they range from a cardboard box or an outhouse to a mansion or a space station. In the second half of the game, players then auction off the properties they gained in the first half to gain the highest value money cards. The player with the most money at the end of the game wins.
I love For Sale. It's such a great game. The simple mechanisms, the 2 phases.
Yeah.
I don't know if I Maybe I just like auction games. I think it's just so elegant.
It really is elegant. It's a modern classic, I feel like.
Agreed.
For Sale is one that should probably be in everyone's collection.
Yeah.
And you know what? I think a lot of people do own it. It's one of those games that most of my friends seem to have a copy of this game in some way or another.
I have the French yellow version.
Yeah.
And then the cards, they're gorgeous, gorgeous cards, and they're tarot-sized cards.
Oh,
so
very
I got
nice.
Some premium sleeves for it.
Oh, wow.
It's great. Yeah, I'm really happy with it.
Beautiful. Yeah, they're one of the newer publishers of this game, but I think they're only publishing it in languages other than English. Like, it seems like Europe.
It's a French version for sure.
Yeah.
But it's language independent, right? So the instructions are in French, but everything else, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I just like the art, so I picked that one up.
Exactly. And as for rules, there's not a lot in this game. It's really super easy to teach to new gamers.
Yeah.
The theme works pretty universally. Everybody understands the idea of buying property, and then later we're going to sell it.
Yeah.
The artwork is really, it's quite perfect. It's quite cartoony, at least in my version. I know the yellow version is a different art, and some of the other versions do as well.
The yellow version is superior, and once everybody's finished here, you can go and jump online and check it out. You'll know what I'm talking about. The original, the classic For Sale art is just blech.
I like it. You don't like it, eh?
I don't know, just sort of mediocre.
I like it. It's cartoony. And I think it adds to the fun that, you're looking at the different images in the houses, and you're seeing how you go from a little cabin to, a regular house to a 2-floor house to a mansion to, that kind of thing. I like the artwork personally. I've had a lot of success with this game, teaching it to kids and to people of different ages. Pretty much everyone that I played it with has enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. And it's one that whenever I do teach it to someone new, they're always like, let's do that one again. I really like that one. If you're not, like you said, you're a fan of auction and bidding games, but I'd say if you're not, there's not much else to this game. So this one might not be for you. But, like all the games on this list, they're not very long, so it won't keep you suffering for very long.
Agreed. The first round is a cumulative auction, correct? So as you go around the table, you have the option to either pass or continue the bid one higher than where it's at. So if it's at 6 and you've only put in 2, you need to add in 4 or 5 more in order to exceed the current bid.
Right.
The second stage is a blind auction where everybody puts in one bid face down in their hand, and we all flip it over at the same time.
Right. And that bid isn't actually using the tokens anymore. It's using the properties themselves.
The cards you won in the first round. That's right. Yeah. It's really quite clever how it does that.
I remember teaching it to a few people, and they'd said, but we don't get to keep the properties in this game. Yeah, no, you don't. You don't get to live in the space station. There's a new expansion for the game. I think it's the Eagle Griffin version that is advisors.
Okay.
And it adds another round of auctioning where you're bidding on getting advisors to help you through the other 2 rounds of the game.
No way.
I haven't actually played it yet.
Wild. I had no idea. I'll have to check that out.
That. And you can play For Sale on BoardGameArena.com with a premium account.
So, Chris, what makes For Sale a good filler game?
It's fun to fill your hand with real estate.
It's good to have a full portfolio. Fantastic Gymnastics. Fantastic Gymnastics is a children's gymnastic-themed electronic dexterity contraption for as many players as you want, ages 8 and up, published by Hasbro in 2016.
So I know this game. I'm really eager to see how you describe it.
So Fantastic Gymnastic resembles the uneven bars, but it's only one bar. And it's similar to Hungry Hippos or Rock'em Sock'em Robots. It's a hunk of plastic. It's a ridiculous plasticky contraption. And it looks like one parallel bar that a gymnast is hanging from. There's 2 buttons on this thing. One button, when pressed, will cause the gymnast to form a pike. The little robot will violently swing its legs forward. And when you let go of the button, violently swing them straight again. So in this way, you can create a momentum because then the gymnast will rock back and forth if you time your button pushing and releasing at the correct time. The goal is to get the gymnast into a backwards giant, which is the gymnast term for spinning around the bar as quickly as you can.
Okay. I'm glad you explained that one.
Then, at the right moment, you press the other button, which causes the gymnast to let go, performing a salto backwards straight dismount onto a Velcro pad. If all things go right, you land on the 100-point square and win your points. But this isn't really a game. It's an activity where everybody gathers around one person trying to get this contraption to work.
Right.
It is similar to Labyrinth or the cup and ball in a string, where it's a solitary game, but it's a big enough spectacle that it draws a crowd. And you get a few, right? You take a few cracks at it. You try to get the gymnast to spin around the bar, and then you hit the release button, and maybe he goes flying off and landing on the table across the room, and everybody laughs, and you go and get it and set it all back up again, and maybe somebody else has a turn. Maybe you have a few more turns. And it's terrific in that you just keep wanting to, just one more turn. You know what? I'm going to get it this time. Hold on. Just one more turn.
Yeah.
And it's punishing. It is not an easy thing to do.
It's not easy.
Once you've mastered it, you can easily forget how it works, right? There's no muscle memory. For some reason, it doesn't stay with you.
Yeah.
So every time you go back to it, it's like learning it all over again, getting that momentum, getting that rhythm, getting that centripetal force on the gymnast in order to get him, not just to go around, but in order to make the flip after you let him go. And if he's going too fast or not fast enough, they're not going to stick the landing. It's really, really tricky.
Yeah, it's not as simple as just sort of pressing the button as fast as you can or just pressing it once. There's a real rhythm to how you have to press that button to make the little dude sort of swing his legs fast or hard enough and fast enough to get him over the bar so that he's doing these 360 spins.
Yeah.
Before, and then at that point you have to time when in the 360 spin do you press the other button, which makes his little magnetic hands let go, release from the bar and hopefully propel himself in the right direction towards the scoring mat. It's quite impossibly hard, I have to say. I've played it several times with you, and I don't know if I've ever gotten any points.
So fortunately, the release mechanism has actually been kind of calibrated for you. It will always let go at the right spot in the arc.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you just have to have the button down, and when the gymnast gets to the right spot, that's when the gymnast will let go. So it's going to be the right release time.
Right.
The trick, though, is to make sure that the gymnast is going the right speed when you press the button.
Right.
Because going too fast or going too slow will cause it to not be successful.
Well, that would explain why I've never gotten any points at this game.
It's really tricky. It is really tricky.
Yeah.
But it's great. You get it going. And what I like about this game is you can leave it set up. It's not really a game. It's an activity. You leave it set up on another table. It doesn't take up much room.
Yeah.
And anybody who's, we were playing a game of Coup and I got knocked out. I'm not in the game anymore. Well, I'm just going to go, practice my salto backwards straight dismount.
It's a fun one. It is the true definition of a filler because it really doesn't matter if you win or not. But it is sort of this addictive little thing that it's like, I've got to try it again. I've got to do it again. Oh no, he went flying this time. He didn't get around in circles.
We went up to the cottage a couple of summers ago, and this was one of the dozen games that I brought up with me. And right, you brought some fillers, you brought some big games, you brought some social deduction, you brought some party games. This one set up the entire weekend. And we're like, we're making breakfast, so you're doing that? Okay, I'm just going to try to, right? See if I could. And by the end of the weekend, we were all pretty good at it. And we'd have tournaments, right? We'd be like, okay, we each get 5 dismounts, right?
Yep.
Try to, it doesn't matter how many times you go around the bar, you get 5 launches and see how many points you can acquire in that amount of time. And then go to it, keep going to break tiebreakers. It can be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't believe it's sold anymore.
Oh, really?
I picked this up at a thrift shop on a lark. And it was such a hit with my group that I've been continually buying them at thrift shops. I see them every once in a while, and I have a small list of people who want one. And when I find them, I bequeath them to them.
Very nice.
But I tried to find one on Amazon, and they're upwards to $100 now because they're either between printings or out of print.
Wow.
But I don't know if I would spend the $20 on it I think is the face value.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's worth that much money. But if you do find it in a thrift shop, it's good for a laugh.
Is it the kind of game where, your 7 or 8 year old is like, please, please, please get me Fantastic Gymnastics. I want that for Christmas. And they get it and they play with it for 20 minutes and then they never play with it again.
I think there's a certain market of game that is just aunts and uncles and grandpas buying it for kid, right? It didn't matter what.
Yeah.
Don't step in it. Pie face, right? Like,
yeah, pie face is a good one. Yeah.
Countless plastic garbage that's being put out. But this is one of those that just was a bit different, a little bit.
It stands out.
Yeah. It's unique in that way.
Cool. Why would you say that Fantastic Gymnastics is a fun filler game?
As one player is having their turn, everybody else gets to top up their glasses, fill up the chip bowls, right?
Yep. Fill up their drinks.
It's a great filler game. Have you played any of the games that we've talked about in these episodes? What's your favorite filler and why is it a filler? Drop us a line at escapeintoboardgames@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to the Escape Into Board Games podcast. Be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Escape Into Board Games.
This episode is produced by Matt McKenzie and Chris Cormier. Production assistance by Sherry Cormier. Music by John Yasut and Daniel Carlton. See you at the next Escape.